The flowers at Whitmore Funeral Chapel cost $14,000. I know because I paid for them. Every white lily, every ribbon of silk draped across the mahogany casket, every single candle arranged in precise rows along the chapel's limestone walls. I chose them. I approved the invoice. I wrote the check from the family account, the one I had managed alone for 11 years while my father's health declined. And yet, when I walked through those double doors in my black Armani dress, the woman standing at the entrance, my brother's wife, Clarissa, looked me directly in the eyes and said, loud enough for the first 3 rows to hear, "Oh, we weren't sure you'd actually show up. Gregory said you've been difficult." Difficult. I stood completely still for 4 seconds. I counted them. People turned. Cousins I hadn't seen in a decade. My father's business partners. His pastor. His neighbor, Mrs. Aldridge, who had known me since I was 7 years old. And I did something that surprised everyone in that room, including myself. I smiled. Not the fragile smile of someone wounded. The quiet smile of someone who already knows exactly how the story ends. I walked past Clarissa without a single word, took my seat in the front row, the one with my name on a small white card, because I had arranged the seating chart too, and I waited. Because what Clarissa did not know, what Gregory had apparently forgotten to tell her, what no one in that room understood yet was this. 3 weeks before my father took his final breath, he had called me into his study, sat across from me with steady eyes, and said, "Vivian, I need you to promise me something." I promised, and that promise changed everything. My name is Vivian Whitmore Alcott. I'm 44 years old. I hold a master's degree in estate law from Georgetown, and for the past 11 years I served as the sole financial administrator of the Whitmore Family Trust, a diversified asset portfolio currently valued at $4.3 million, including a lake house in Vermont, 2 commercial properties in Richmond, Virginia, and a significant stock position my father built over 40 years. My brother Gregory is 47. He lives in a beautiful house in Scottsdale that our father helped him purchase in 2009. He has not held a salaried position since 2017. He plays golf 4 times a week and refers to himself at dinner parties as an entrepreneur. Gregory and I were never close, but for most of our adult lives, we maintained a functional distance, the kind that works as long as no one tests the perimeter. Our father, William Emmett Whitmore, tested no one. He was a gentle, measured man who believed that family meant loyalty without conditions. He gave generously, sometimes too generously. When his health began to decline in 2019, a diagnosis of early-stage Parkinson's that progressed faster than anyone anticipated, I moved back to Richmond. I left my apartment in Washington, D.C. I restructured my consulting work to part-time. I drove him to appointments. I managed his correspondence, his accounts, his medications. Gregory visited 4 times in 4 years. I counted those too. In the final 18 months of my father's life, Gregory began calling more frequently. Not to ask about Dad's health, to ask about the trust. Has he updated the distribution percentages? Did he change the beneficiary structure after Mom died? Vivian, I'm just asking what any reasonable person would ask. And Clarissa, who had married Gregory in 2015 and had since become the appointed spokesperson for his every financial anxiety, began showing up at family events with the energy of someone auditing a business, not attending a dinner. She once asked me at Thanksgiving, while holding a glass of Sauvignon Blanc and smiling with her perfect teeth, "So the trustee role, does that transfer automatically, or does someone have to be, approved?" I looked at her. I said, "It's a legally binding fiduciary appointment, not a popularity contest." She laughed like I'd made a joke. I hadn't. What I didn't tell her, what I hadn't told anyone, was that 6 months earlier, my father had called me into his study and asked me to sit down. And what he said in that room would not surface until exactly 31 days after his death. The service began at 11 a.m. Gregory delivered the eulogy. It was 11 minutes long and referenced himself 46 times. I counted, quietly from the front row, with my hands folded in my lap and my expression perfectly composed. He spoke about their fishing trips, their business conversations, their special bond. He painted a portrait of a father-son relationship so cinematic, so golden-tinted, that several people in the room were visibly moved. I was not moved, because I knew the truth. The fishing trips stopped in 2011. The business conversations Gregory referenced had actually been phone calls where my father asked me, after hanging up with Gregory, "Did I say the right things?" I don't want him to feel excluded. My father protected Gregory his entire life. Not because Gregory deserved it, because my father was incapable of watching someone he loved feel diminished. It was his greatest gift, and in the end, his only real vulnerability. After the eulogy, during the reception in the adjacent hall, cream-colored walls, catered from Brenner's, the good caterer, which I had also arranged, Clarissa approached me with a woman I didn't recognize. "Vivian, this is Sandra. She's Gregory's financial advisor." I looked at Sandra. Sandra had a leather portfolio under her arm and the practiced smile of someone who charges $400 an hour. "It's lovely to meet you," Sandra said. "Gregory mentioned you've been managing the trust. We'd love to schedule a transition meeting sometime this week, just to ensure continuity." I set down my water glass with the precision of a surgeon placing a scalpel. "A transition meeting," I repeated. "Yes, given the circumstances." "What circumstances would those be, Sandra?" She glanced at Clarissa. Clarissa smiled encouragingly. "Well, Gregory is the eldest, and with your father gone, we assumed the administrative structure would naturally..." "Would naturally what?" I said, not aggressively. Softly, the way you speak when you don't need volume to make a point. Sandra stopped. "I'd recommend," I said, "that before scheduling any meetings, someone in this arrangement retain legal counsel. Not a financial advisor. An attorney. A very good one." I picked up my water glass. I walked away. Behind me, I heard Clarissa whisper something. I didn't turn around. If you've ever been underestimated in a moment that mattered, stay with me. Because what happens next is the part they never saw coming. 2 days after the funeral, Gregory called. His voice was different. Softer. The aggressive undertone of the reception replaced by something that almost resembled sincerity. "Viv, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Clarissa, you know how she is. She gets anxious about logistics. She didn't mean anything by it." I was sitting in my father's study. At his desk. In his chair, the one he had reupholstered in dark green leather in 1994. I was reviewing documents. "I appreciate you calling, Gregory. I think we should work together on this. Dad would have wanted that." "You know he would." I said nothing. "You've done an incredible job managing everything." "Truly. I've never said that enough. But now that he's gone, I think we should sit down, with both our attorneys, and figure out a fair path forward. Something that honors everyone." "That sounds reasonable," I said. And I meant it. Because what Gregory was proposing, a formal legal meeting with attorneys present, was exactly what I had been preparing for. He heard agreement in my voice and relaxed. "Great. Let's say Thursday. We can use my attorney's office. Hargrove and Associates." "I'll be there," I said. We hung up. I sat for a moment in my father's chair in his study, surrounded by his books and his photographs, and the smell of a cedar closet across the hall. Then I opened the folder on the desk in front of me. Inside were 9 documents. 9 documents that my father, methodical, patient, 20 steps ahead William Emmett Whitmore, had spent the last 8 months of his life preparing. In complete secrecy, with the help of one attorney, not Hargrove and Associates. The will Gregory expected to contest had already been replaced. 16 months before the funeral. The conference room on the 14th floor had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the James River. The table seated 12. Gregory sat on one side with Clarissa, who had, apparently, appointed herself an emotional support attendee, and Sandra the financial advisor, and a silver-haired attorney named Clifton Hargrove, who had the practiced gravitas of a man who believed his reputation preceded him sufficiently. I sat across from them with one person, my attorney, a woman named Dr. Renata Rosé, who held dual degrees in estate law and forensic accounting, and who wore a charcoal blazer and spoke in complete sentences with 0 unnecessary words. Clifton Hargrove opened with a smile. "We appreciate everyone making time for this. Obviously, it's a difficult period for the family. Our intention today is simply to review the basic structure of the trust and discuss the path forward regarding administration." "Wonderful," Renata said. She placed a single folder on the table. "We'll be happy to review the structure. Shall we start with the 2021 amendment, or would you prefer the 2022 restatement?" A silence. "I'm sorry, the restatement?" Hargrove said. The full trust restatement executed on March 14, 2022, Renata said. Notarized, witnessed by 2 independent parties, and filed with the Richmond Circuit Court on March 19 of the same year. Gregory's expression shifted, just slightly, the way a person's face moves when the floor beneath them turns to water. We weren't aware of a restatement, Hargrove said carefully. That's because your client was not a party to it, Renata replied. She opened the folder and slid 3 copies across the table with the calm of someone who had rehearsed this moment without theatrics. The 2022 restatement was executed by William Emmett Whitmore in full legal capacity, verified by a neurologist assessment conducted February 28, 2022, which confirmed no cognitive impairment at time of signing. The restatement designates Vivian Whitmore Alcott as sole successor trustee with full discretionary authority over asset distribution. It also establishes a conditional bequest structure for Gregory Thomas Whitmore. Conditional, Gregory said. Conditional. He looked at Clarissa. Clarissa looked at Sandra. Sandra looked at the document. What conditions? Gregory asked. I spoke for the first time since sitting down. Dad left you the lake house, I said, and a structured distribution of $340,000, paid over 7 years, not as a lump sum. Contingent on one requirement. Gregory's jaw tightened. What requirement? That you provide annual documentation of active employment or business revenue. 12 consecutive months, verified by a CPA. Every year for 7 years. The room was very quiet. He knew, I said. Not unkindly. He knew exactly what he was doing. He built the condition into the document himself. A father's last lesson. Stay with me, because Gregory's next move is the one that decided everything. Gregory did not take the news gracefully. Within 48 hours, Hargrove and Associates filed a motion to contest the 2022 restatement, citing 3 arguments: undue influence by a beneficiary, meaning me, diminished capacity on behalf of the testator, meaning my father, and procedural irregularities in the filing. They expected a fight. What they got was documentation. Renata had spent the 3 weeks between my father's death and the Thursday meeting building what she called the architecture, a layered evidentiary structure that addressed each possible line of attack before it was launched. 4. Undue influence. A sworn statement from my father's primary care physician, Dr. Marcus Webb, confirming that Vivian Whitmore Alcott was not present at any of the 3 meetings between William Whitmore and his estate attorney, Harriet Solano of Solano Legal Group. Meeting logs, time-stamped entry records from Harriet's office building, and my own verifiable location data, calendar appointments, toll records, a conference call I'd led remotely from D.C. on the date of the second meeting, placed me unambiguously elsewhere. For diminished capacity, the neurologist report, a 22-page clinical assessment by Dr. Patricia Ewan of VCU Medical Center, conducted 6 days before the restatement signing, finding no evidence of cognitive impairment, no indicators of Parkinson's-related dementia, and full decisional capacity in all domains evaluated. Dr. Ewan had also included, at my father's request, a 1-paragraph personal addendum. It read, Mr. Whitmore expressed clearly and independently that he had considered this decision for more than 2 years. He stated, without prompting, I am not doing this because I'm angry. I'm doing this because I finally understand the difference between love and enabling. I want to be remembered as someone who knew the difference. I read that paragraph for the first time in Renata's office the night before the Thursday meeting. It was the first time I had cried since my father died. For procedural irregularities, the filing records were pristine. Harriet Solano had practiced estate law for 31 years. There were no irregularities. There never were. Hargrove withdrew the contest motion on a Wednesday morning, 14 days after filing it. Gregory called me that afternoon. He didn't apologize. He said, This isn't over. I said, Gregory, it was over before it began. Dad made sure of that. I hung up. The trust administration proceeded on schedule. The lake house in Vermont, a 3-bedroom property on Lake Willoughby, assessed at $890,000, was transferred to Gregory's name within 60 days of probate closure, exactly as the restatement specified. The structured distribution began its 7-year cycle. The first payment of $48,571 was processed in the 4th month after Gregory submitted documentation of a consulting arrangement he had entered, apparently motivated, for the first time in several years, to generate verifiable professional income. The 2 commercial properties in Richmond were retained within the trust, generating annual rental income of approximately $127,000, which the restatement directed toward a charitable education fund my father had established in my mother's name, the Eleanor Whitmore Scholarship, which had quietly awarded $6,000 annually to first-generation college students at a local community college since 2018. I increased the annual award to $18,000. I kept my father's desk. Clarissa never called me again. Sandra, the financial advisor, sent a professional courtesy email 3 months later asking if I needed any assistance with trust investment strategies. I did not respond. What I did do, what I had promised my father I would do, was drive to Lake Willoughby in October when the leaves were at their absolute peak and sit on the dock of the house I had grown up visiting every summer and stay there until the sun finished setting. He had asked me to do that. In his study, in those final weeks, "Go to the lake one more time," he'd said. "After everything settles, sit on the dock. Let it be quiet. That's what I'll be in the end. Just quiet." I sat on that dock for 2 hours and 18 minutes. I counted them. People ask me, when they learn the broad outline of what happened, whether I was angry. Not the performative kind of question. The real one. The one beneath it. Weren't you furious? And I tell them the truth, which surprises them every time. No. Not because what happened wasn't painful. Standing in that chapel, in that dress, having paid for every flower in the room, and being spoken to as though I were an inconvenience, that was painful. Watching my brother eulogize a relationship that existed primarily in his imagination, while I had spent 4 years driving to specialist appointments and managing insurance appeals and learning the precise dosage at which my father's medication worked best, that was painful. But anger requires you to be surprised. And I was not surprised. What my father had raised me to be, quietly, methodically, by example more than instruction, was prepared. He used to say, in his measured way, that the most powerful thing a person could do was to refuse to react on someone else's timeline, to move slowly when others moved fast, to document when others assumed, to plan when others performed. He spent the last 8 months of his life making sure I would never have to fight for what was already mine. That is not a legal strategy. That is a love language. And the lesson I carry forward, the one I now apply in every professional relationship, every family dynamic, every room where someone assumes that my composure means I am not paying attention, is this. The quietest person in the room is frequently the most prepared. Clarissa called me difficult. She was not wrong. I am difficult for people who mistake stillness for weakness and kindness for ignorance, and a woman who doesn't raise her voice for a woman who has nothing to say. My father knew exactly who I was. He spent 11 years watching me, trusted me with everything he had built, and in his final months, left no detail to chance, because he understood something that Gregory and Clarissa, for all their maneuvering, never once considered. The person who shows up is the person who earns the right to stay. I showed up, every single time. The trust remains active. The scholarship continues. The dock at Lake Willoughby still faces east. And every October, when the leaves turn, I go back, because he asked me to, and I keep every promise I make. If this story moved you, if you've ever been the one who showed up, the one who managed, the one who was called difficult for knowing exactly what you were worth, leave a comment below. Tell me, were you the one who stayed? And if someone in your life needs to hear this today, share it, because some stories aren't just stories. Some stories are mirrors.